Hi, come on in. We're going to get going in just a few minutes. Let everybody get a cup of coffee. Well, we'll get going in just a little while. Go on, enjoy each other's company. Be right back. Good evening. Good afternoon. I think it's time to get started. I hope you had a good evening and enjoyable day in Seattle. It's hard to ask for a better place to host a convention. It's been a phenomenal facility, and I hope everyone enjoyed the convenience of how everything was located. So please get your coffee, grab your coffee, take a seat, and we'll hear from our last, but certainly not the least, keynote speaker of this convention. I also want to extend a welcome to those via webcast. Thank you, RCR Wireless, for live streaming this event. In addition to a great program, I think we have all lined up. I think we should mention that we have a spectacular finish also. So if for one lucky individual, we'll walk out here with $500 cash richer. And so we'll be awarding a cash prize right after this event. Anyone that has a business card that you would like to give to Amanda or Caitlin, anybody, they'll just walk down the aisle and pass it over, get your business card. We'll put it in the drawing for $500, and that'll be the first drawing. And you got to be present to win. So we'll have John Stanton, and then we'll have the awards ceremony, awards presentations. And then we're going to have additional cash prizes tonight on the exhibit floor. But here's a chance for everyone to have a few more dollars in their pocket when they walk out. Now, joining us this afternoon is John Stanton, chairman of Trilogy Partners, Management Committee. I've had the pleasure of knowing John for almost 20 years, and he's one of the first wireless CEOs I worked with at another trade association. But John's fabled past does not start in 1996. He was originally one of the group of visionaries with this guy by the name of Craig McCaw that began the wireless revolution in 1984. Yes, he was a rebel. And before his current position, John served as CEO of T-Mobile USA, and before that as CEO of VoiceStream. He also served as chairman of the board and CEO of Western Wireless until his company's acquisition by Alltel. There he was I guess he also owned numerous other wireless companies internationally, from Africa to the Caucasus to the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, to New Zealand. And so he's certainly well-versed in those areas that are difficult to serve. Western Wireless was one of the country's largest rural wireless providers, serving at one time over 27 states. So John is no stranger to this plethora of issues and challenges faced by carriers trying to cover large areas. He's also, as he had this phenomenal success on the business side, I should also mention that during all this time, his corporate success and achievements were paralleled by his philanthropic leadership for his community and his alma mater, and he's been a citizen of the great Seattle area that they're very proud of. And we'll excuse him for taking 2 years off, probably to get his MBA from Harvard, but on the East Coast. But he came back to Seattle, so it is so nice to have him sitting down with us today. You've seen this pattern start here, the CEO. Well, he added another CEO title just recently, as you may have known. He and his associates really bought the Seattle Mariners, and so now we have the CEO and chairman of the board of the Mariners, another CEO title to add to his collection. And I got to tell you, talking to him in the back here, I think the Seattle Mariners have a great future ahead of themselves, because this guy is dedicated to that issue. So why don't we welcome John out, and let's have a fireside chat with what I think is one of the strategic thinkers in the wireless world. John?
I
appreciate it. Listen, this guy's too cool. I'm gonna have to take this tie off. I think I got some questions here, though. I'll keep these out. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, my friend. It's wonderful to be here.
It's
good that we've got the baseball game here on the prompters in front of us.
Yeah, that was a negotiation back there. He wanted to put. They were up 1-0 in the bottom of the eighth or top of the ninth.
Top of the ninth. Unfortunately, your introduction went on so long it allowed Edwin Encarnacion to get a home run off of us. It's now 1-1 in the ninth.
Oh gosh. Well, let's hope it goes long extra innings so that you can see the end of it there.
Perfect.
Well, first, welcome, but also, we'll start off with an easy question, and that is, what is Trilogy Partners? What do you do? What do you invest in? What do you look for? Share with us some of the things you've been doing recently with Trilogy.
Trilogy's got a wonderful history, and it's fun. After we sold our Western Wireless business, a group of us got together from the old Western team and the old VoiceStream team, and we were all around 50 at the time, and we said, we're not done. So we decided to form a series of partnerships. Some of our wives refer to our offices as a clubhouse, but it's a place where we actually get some work done, and we have right now 3 different partnerships plus some ancillary activities. We have an operating business, Trilogy International. As you noted in the introduction, we had been in a number of different countries when we sold Western, and Alltel took that over and really sold off those properties. But we operate today in Bolivia and in New Zealand. And so Both are really interesting places, and we may get a chance to talk a little bit about those. But that's an operating business. It's 300 and some million in revenue, and customers and lots of things you got to worry about. The second business is called Trilogy Equity Partners. It's kind of a traditional venture capital. We've made about 70 investments over the last 11 years. We have 29 active investments. We tried initially to stay very close to home with the wireless businesses, wireless-related businesses. We've done some different things. We've done half a dozen deals, investments in Israel. Some of the names are a little more familiar. We were an early investor in Assurion, which I suspect many of you use for handset insurance. We were investor in, we were the seed capital in a business called Lookout, which is a device security business. But we also have investments in things completely unrelated. If you probably the folks that I know from the industry are too old for this, but maybe your children or grandchildren could use Red Tricycle, which is an online magazine like Urban Candidate. And the third partnership is the newest. It's called Trilogy Search, and there's a new model where young people coming out of school are looking for an opportunity to buy a business, typically buy a baby boomer from a baby boomer that is aging out, doesn't have heirs. And so we've done 39 investments and searches, 7 companies that have come from that. And they range from a business that prints the New York Times books to a business that's kind of the open table for hair salons. So it's all small businesses, but all kind of an opportunity to stay involved. And the connecting tissue is that it's an opportunity for us to leverage our money and the desire to be involved in businesses and help people grow their businesses.
Okay. Sounds really interesting.
It is.
No small number of issues you're keeping up with. Well, I think everyone would agree that clearly you're one of the best strategic thinkers in the wireless industry. Interesting, you've sort of been there at every one of these little critical plateaus that wireless has undergone since 1984. And I know everyone wants to know, what do you think about the industry and where are we going? What is this next plateau? Are we about to see a major new world in the telecom industry?
I think that you look at the good, right? That we used to talk about the notion of having to explain what a wireless phone was as a old-fashioned wireline phone where you cut the wires, and literally have to do that in investor presentations, to then the evolution to talking about the notion of a number associated with a person rather than a place. And that became kind of in the early 90s, kind of became the defining theme for a lot of the analysts and a lot of the companies. And now we've seen ubiquity. We've seen essentially saturation in terms of penetration. Even countries like Bolivia has there are probably 7 million phones in a country of 8 million people. So I mean you have a degree of penetration in the third world that is such that you really have to be different and look at it. I think that the thing that concerns me, on the other hand, is us getting paid for delivering more services, right? If 4G and 5G services represent an opportunity to do more for customers and have them use it as a productivity tool, as a life enhancement tool, we need to get paid. And you look at across the world, starting almost 10 years ago now in a lot of European countries that developed earlier than the States, a decline in industry revenue. You look at a decline, on an industry basis in the States in service revenue, masked a little bit by handset pricing. Yet we are continuing to have to invest in additional spectrum, in additional infrastructure. That's true in both Bolivia and in New Zealand, right? I could be talking about Bolivia and having to have had to buy the equivalent of AWS spectrum down there last year, and having the government needing to sell in order to finance its activities. But the dynamic of having the an industry structure that doesn't allow us to get paid. And I think that's far more true in the U.S. than it is in countries, Bolivia and New Zealand each have 3 active national carriers, and that to me is a more stable environment in where you've got the rate of industry growth that we've got today. So I think that the last thing I'd say is, there are just so many new exciting opportunities in terms of adding additional services, partnering with some of the companies that offer content, having your own unique content, doing unique things on devices. Great opportunities, but we simply have to be smarter. As you implied, we reinvent ourselves, I think, at each inflection point in the industry. And, in a sense, they have followed the generations from analog to 2G to 3G to 4G and to 5G. You've got to reinvent yourself and think differently about the role you play as a carrier.
While I was told some of our board members, I'd like to ask some questions of John Stanton. What do you want to ask? And universally, the question they want to ask you is, okay, you've been there, done that in rural America, urban, suburban. If you were a small carrier in the United States today, what would you do? What would you focus on in order to be competitive and survive in the marketplace and beyond?
In a sense, I think there are a couple of strategies, and I look at it, we're a large shareholder in GCI, for example, and I spend a lot of time with my friends, there, and they've got a different kind of an opportunity, but I think they're doing some really smart things. We still own the Cellular One brand, and there are probably a few of our partners here in the market. Hey, I look at the people who are trying to figure out a way to have a unique identity, right? In many cases, I think hyper-local, to recognize, in a sense, just as we did in the 80s when at the time of the break of AT&T, we were petrified that these huge regional bell operating companies, 7 of them at the time, were going to create a regional footprint, and we were going to be competing on a local basis. Therefore, our first strategy was to be hyper-local, and that was also true with our Western business in the 90s. And I think that that's an opportunity. I think you can create local content. You can look at, it may be that Verizon's going to carry the NFL, but the opportunity to carry the high school football game, to be able to do things, that are creative by partnering. And
so
then
do you see the smaller carriers? Do they have a future? Do they have a role in this next?
The most fundamental
plateau?
most fundamental is hyper-local customer service. Make people feel that you are their carrier. The impersonal nature of an AT&T and a Verizon, is the subject of late night television jokes. There is another element to it, right? There are things that we have to do as a local carrier that are fundamentally national. I look at some of the things that you guys have done here with CCA in fighting for roaming and fighting to make data roaming a part of the as the Title II services, the ability to ensure that your customers have the ability to travel and roam effectively wherever they go. I think the notion of being able to get access to handsets, and I understand some of your larger members have made handset pricing available to them. I think that is essential because customers way too often come in and ask for the iPhone or the Samsung phone or the other devices. We sell a lot of Chinese phones in our both Bolivia and New Zealand, both ZTE and Xiaomi. But those you have to be able to offer a selection of phones and devices. And I think that then the last piece is, to work together. The small carriers still represent value, or political power, I should say, and the ability, the political leaders value having your support and take advantage of that. I mean, I think back in the independent telco days, and some of you come from that world, independent telcos always punched above their weight in Washington. I think that you've got the ability as small carriers to do that. I think that you can get help in restraining the activities of Verizon and AT&T, but you can also get help in getting access to, smaller spectrum bytes is obviously important. Having the ability to get access. Universal service is something I know you guys have been active on, and I've got some, I think we'll talk about it, some strong opinions about it that I think it represents an opportunity for you to do more and more.
Well, let's stay on that universal service, because I know that you and I probably over the years have agreed that the main thing is getting coverage. The main thing is building out a network that people can enjoy wireless services with. What's right and what's wrong about USF, Mobility One, CAF? The approach that has been taken on USF.
Well, I don't live it every day the way you do. So let me make general observations, but go back to, not long after you and I met, we were lobbying Senator Dorgan to make sure that wireless was included in the Telecom Act rewrite, and making sure that it was available for facilities-based carriers in rural areas. And the whole point was, and we did an economic study at the time at Western and said that at area where the population density was below 10 people per square mile, that it was a more economic way to deliver basic telephone service via wireless than at using wired facilities. Now, I'm sure the economics have changed some. I'm not current on those numbers, but the principle remains. And that was the basis that facilities-based rural carriers had really a first right at the time to access universal service monies to help build out facilities. I remember in South Dakota, we got fought tooth and nail by, we took this, the Public Utilities Commission to the state Supreme Court 2 times. We finally won. We invited those commissioners out. We sat for hours with maps of South Dakota. They were elected at the time. I assume they still are commissioners. And we sat in this, I remember guys saying, this guy's got a window making business in this town outside of Pierre. You don't have coverage. He's growing his business rapidly. You ought to be able to provide service there. We built a tower there. We had the opportunity to do that. I personally have issues with the degree to which Lifeline has become an opportunity for non-facilities-based carriers to siphon off huge amounts of money. I have an issue with the tilt that the FCC has made towards landline facilities-based carriers away from wireless carriers, because I still think if you want to serve places that go back to the old Western territories, whether it's the Bitterroot in Montana or the Permian Basin in Texas, you are better off having a wireless carrier initially with voice, but now with high-speed data, and that is such an advantage. And I think you've got to march on Washington, continue to make that point.
I graphically remember those meetings we had with Senator Dorgan, and there was another guy in the room with us at the time. His name was...
He's a tall guy.
Yeah,
wasn't he here the other day?
Yeah, I think his name was Tom Wheeler.
Yeah, he was.
But I remember him being really avidly, supportive of the need for a wireless service in rural America, and I thought that, and continue to think that's the right position.
Yeah, and I think that you can make that case to Tom, because Tom, we provided service to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation with our Western Wireless business, and a year or 2 ago, Tom was actually out there visiting, and the native officials had remembered us and remembered Gene DeJordi on our team, and me, and Michael Thompson, and Tom got on a phone that was being provided on a wireless basis where no wired service was available, and called me at home. And that dynamic, I think, you have to remind him. And Tom is so effective in painting a picture and telling a story. You've got to give Tom the paint. You've got to help him make the case and remind him that you do represent the best way to provide services in a lot of areas where there is no service available, but you also have the opportunity to dramatically improve the quality of services in areas where basic wireless, basic data services are, and you can provide much higher, faster speed data. And you look at the ability to use the right spectrum in the right place, the ability to have devices that will meet the individual needs of the communities. You've got some real advantage over the urban carriers that are dealing with capacity issues and dealing with a lot of limitations in where they can locate facilities and all. Take advantage of those opportunities.
Well, since his ears are probably already burning, I thought I'd just touch one more question on Mr. Wheeler, Chairman Wheeler. What's he got right? What's he got wrong? How's he done? He's certainly a formidable chairman.
I joke, I've been a loyal Republican for, I guess, ever, although my will is being tested this year.
So we are.
Yeah. And I'm having dinner with Tom tonight, and I know he's going to torture me over Donald Trump. I know he is. But, Tom and I argued and disagreed about politics forever, but, we're still good friends. And I think that it's a mistake for the industry, and I've seen in different forums people highly critical of him, and it's a mistake. Tom comes from a political world. He is a coalition builder. He knows, and you know him better than I do. You know him better than almost anyone, Steve. But he is a guy who you have to find places to work together on. And I think as to how he's done, he inherited an FCC, and I like Julius, and I thought he was a terrific guy. But Julius looked to build coalitions and consensus within the FCC. Tom and I had breakfast the day he was nominated by the president, and he said, "John, I walk in the door with 3 votes, right? I always know I have 3 votes. It'd be great to get 5, but if I've got 3 votes, I'm going to drive an agenda." And you look at the things that he's been willing to do and to take on, and some benefit us in ways that, net neutrality is an interesting issue because I think it's obviously divisive within the nation, but I think it's divisive within the industry. I can make an argument that there are aspects of net neutrality that actually worked inure to the benefit of the small carriers, right? Because they limit some of the things that the large carriers, or force some of the large carriers to do. I think that he continues to be committed to universal service in a way that I think his predecessor might have killed it altogether for wireless carriers. And I think that he has not done enough. He needs to do more. But I think that driving an agenda around cybersecurity is also very important. I think that is an area, as you mentioned, I'm on the Microsoft board, and it's an area where I was at a briefing on Monday to talk about cybersecurity. It is the threats are enormous. Microsoft is probably the most attacked company in the world because it provides software to virtually every enterprise in the world. Every government, every nonprofit, every corporation uses some Microsoft services. So it's widely attacked, and they understand that. Tom understands that. Tom, we're going to go out to Microsoft and tour the cybersecurity center tomorrow. And so I think Tom's agenda is to make the country a better, safer place. We're going to disagree, right? He starts with customers. He starts with customers in mind, and he wants to deliver more services to them. And, particularly around industry structure and some of the things that he's done, we're just not going to agree. But I think that Tom, we will look back on the period of time that Tom's been chair and say he accomplished more in less time than most any of his predecessors.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. You mentioned Microsoft. I mean, you're on the board. Most of us look at Microsoft as a tech company, maybe not a telecommunications company. You've been on both sides of that sort of river, so to speak. Is Microsoft, over the top, Amazon, Google, are they major competitors? Do they view themselves as competitors to the wireless industry?
If you look at the tech giants, and I'm chair of the compensation committee, right? So we look at our competitors at Microsoft as basically Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, to a lesser extent, companies like HP, Cisco, Oracle, and those companies, I think it's easy to generalize about those companies. I think that if I were a carrier today, I suspect in boardrooms of not only AT&T and Verizon, but probably Sprint, T-Mobile, US, some of the larger of your members, they look, I think, quite reasonably at Google and Apple as important competitors. I think Microsoft is more likely a partner, a provider of content, a provider of software, a provider of services. There certainly are some elements of over the top, but bluntly, the lack of success in delivering a phone causes them to shift and focus more on enterprise-based software, on gaming, where they have a huge business. Their devices, the Surface, I think, is a fabulous device, and I think represents a great opportunity for them. So I think I would view Microsoft as, if I were a carrier, as more of a partner and someone to work with than someone who represents a threat. I look at the possibility of Google, Apple delivering I call it a soft SIM, you call it an eSIM kind of service. I look at some of the things that Comcast has been talking about today and yesterday, and as being concerning as a carrier. I'm less concerned about them, more concerned, frankly, about what Apple and Google can do.
We like partners. Sometimes we think that maybe Microsoft may be so large that they might not want to be partners with some of the smaller carriers. Hopefully we can figure out a way to encourage that dialogue. You mentioned Comcast. Brian Roberts announced the other day that they were going to utilize the authorities they have within their MVNO relationship with Verizon under the Spectrum Code deal, which we opposed, to start providing wireless services. Do you look at them as a real competitor? Are they going to be successful in that endeavor?
They're going to try, and they've obviously got a lot of money.
I think they're even bidding the 600 megahertz.
And I think that some of the things that they have that are unique, that siting issues are far less difficult for them because of the presence in most homes, many businesses. I think that the advantages they've got in having provided these dual SSID essentially set-top boxes in the home that right. double as a Wi-Fi router, I think represent a powerful tool. I think that I've spent some time with them, got a lot of good friends there, including Brian. I think that difficulty for them in delivering a competitive mobile product using Wi-Fi as the primary, and then falling back onto an MVNO-based service, I think it's going to always be inferior. I think that the difficulty is, particularly with 4 national carriers in the urban market, in all the urban markets, the notion that you're going to deliver that kind of service forces you to price down. So you've got to be below T-Mobile and Sprint in terms of your pricing. That's hard to do, and then there are the devices, right? They have to deal with an Apple in terms of devices. That if they think that they can have a proprietary device that will deliver that service and not have one of the top brand devices, I think they're sadly mistaken, and I think that will be an issue. And then distribution. How many of you know where your cable store is, right? It's in the warehouse district, I guarantee you. I mean, it's in $8 a square foot space someplace. They haven't thought as a retailer, and they still think as monopolists in a lot of ways. I would encourage you and the industry to work with them, because as a practical matter, they're not going to get to the rural areas, right? I know you've got members, right, particularly Sprint and T-Mobile US, that have significant positions in urban areas, and they've got a different set of issues. I think they too can partner with them, but to the extent that they have unique content. I mean, we think about Comcast as a cable company. Their stated goal, Brian's stated goal 10 years ago, was to get to the point that he had 50% of his revenue coming from content. They own 13 sports networks, regional sports networks. They own, obviously NBC, but they own a variety of channels. They have some interesting content. So can you partner with them? Can you find ways of working with them for your individual members?
Right.
probably united because they're not going to be able to do 500 deals, right? That they're going to want to do a deal with either Sprint or T-Mobile or both, right? They're not going to want to do a deal with AT&T and Verizon beyond the MVNO deal that they've got. But I think that there are ways to work with them. I don't regard them as a threat. And if they continue down the path that at least Brian stated publicly, I think they're going to fail miserably.
Oh, wow. Disruptors. That, we 2 or 3 big disruptors on the horizon. And we have Sigfox and Altice. They all say they have this really neat millimeter wave, low power capability to hit the IoT, industrial IoT, using unlicensed spectrum. Are they a threat? Are they going to challenge the wireless marketplace? Are they going to deplete ARPU and revenues even further?
I'd turn the question just slightly, right? I think the question is, what's the next opportunity, not who's the next disruptor, right? Because there's been a tendency, if you go back in time in our industry and in industries that preceded us, for the established carriers, whether they're large or small, to miss the fact that there is something new that people need, right? A data service, voice stream at the time, T-Mobile was the first to offer texting, and part of the reason was that Verizon and AT&T, when they went down a CDMA and a TDMA path, said, texting really doesn't represent, it won't work in the U.S. It won't be important in the U.S. And that was, less than 20 years ago.
So you don't see this as major disruption?
I think IoT is a great opportunity, and if the carriers don't take advantage of the opportunity, other people will. If you look at the marrying of various existing technologies, and some of the enhancements around RFID technology and the like, I think there's an opportunity there, and if we don't do it, someone will. And that someone, I think, is more likely to be a software company than a new carrier, right? I think it's hard. I mean, we saw Altice, we competed against them in the Dominican Republic. I mean, familiar with what they've tried to do in both the US and in France. I think that if you look at what Iliad's doing in France, it really is a pricing technique. It's really not it's not a technology-driven technique. I think at each turn there are new and interesting opportunities, and if existing players attack them and are aggressive in pursuing those, you in effect foreclose the opportunities for the new entrant because they obviously have to start greenfield in terms of their investment.
All right, we're getting closer to running out of time. Is this thing working? Okay. So I thought maybe I could, is it working? Okay, speed it up. Maybe do a yes or no and a fast chat and give you an opportunity.
I don't do that well.
Yeah, I know.
I'll try.
But I thought
it's 1-1 in the 10th, by the way. So.
Okay.
I thought that was the first question.
How about it's 1-1 in the 10th? Okay.
1-1 in the 10th, bottom of the 10th. So.
Oh my gosh! I'm gonna have to put my earbud.
One swing and we can be done.
Okay. And hopefully in yours. Okay. Why don't we try net neutrality? I mean. FirstNet. Is FirstNet a disruptor? Is it going to work? Is it going to be built?
I don't know if I tend to be, it goes back to the Republican thing, right? So, I tend to be skeptical about the government getting into business because they couldn't effectively deal with the carriers. I mean, we had the ability to deliver all the capabilities that they are looking for. And if they wanted to make more spectrum available, this industry has demonstrated its willingness to be hungry. I'm skeptical that they'll get it together. I'm skeptical of the they've got some formidable people involved. They've got certainly, essentially unlimited capital, from in terms of government support. I would, embrace them and try to work with them. But I wouldn't bet the farm on it because I don't know if it'll even get built.
Okay. I got to ask this question, and you can do more than yes or no because you're going to anyway. T-Mobile, this old company of yours called T-Mobile. What do you think about T-Mobile? What are they doing? How are they doing?
I got to tell you, there are thousands of people. When we sold, we had 18,875 people. In number of that's a little over 20 years, a little under 20 years ago. We started 20 years ago. We sold in May of 2001. The whole Alumni Association is incredibly proud. I mean, as much as I appreciated what Robert Dodson and that team, many of whom are still there, were willing to do. They were fundamentally constrained by the capital needs for Deutsche Telekom and their needs in Europe, and by virtue of the Metro merger and the freedom, John's just kicked ass and taken names. I wouldn't do a lot of the things John's done. I'm notwithstanding the absence of a tie, I'm probably a more conservative guy, but I don't really care how he does it. They have not only kicked AT&T and Verizon in the knees, they've kicked them a little higher and done it pretty effectively. Yeah. And I think it's fun.
That's true.
I don't look good in pink, though.
Oh. There's another company that owns the fifth largest spectrum owner in the United States, a company called Dish. They're a member of CCA. What do you think about Dish, their options? What about Mr. Ergen? What do you think Mr. Ergen's going to do?
Well, maybe Charlie and John came from the same gene pool. They're both crazy. But both are crazy like foxes and smarter than hell. And I stepped in and ran company Clearwire for a while.
Battlefield promotion.
Yeah, exactly. I showed up as an independent director and ended up as CEO, so that wasn't a good thing.
You got this thing with CEO.
Yeah,
title,
I know.
Right?
I'm trying to get rid of that. But I think that they're very clever. They own, as you mentioned, a huge spectrum position. They've got to have a strategy at some point in time. The challenge in working with Charlie, at least when he was bidding with us, we didn't really know what he was doing at various points in time. He keeps his cards very close to the vest. I think he's got to partner with a facilities-based carrier, but that's a traditional view, and he may not. I think he's got to find a way to deliver a different service. I don't think just being a wholesale provider of capacity is likely to get him a return on investment, but provide different alternative services that marry his, the video content that he's got and the capabilities that he's got from his traditional business with this to deliver a new, different service. And I think he's a great candidate for your members to partner with.
Yeah, a good partner. Are we going to have 4 wireless national carriers in 2 years?
I hope not. I think I'm sure there are folks from Sprint and T-Mobile in the room, and I just don't think they can ever earn their cost of capital in a 4-player market if industry revenues are flat to down over a long period of time. And I think that bluntly, the government should have. I'm glad there was, the AT&T T-Mobile deal did not happen. I think there should be a combination of Sprint and T-Mobile. And I know nothing, so it's easy for me to say. But I think it's important. I think that will create the ability for them to both operate their business and accumulate capital to be able to compete effectively. If you combine Sprint and T-Mobile, I think that their combined EBITDA is 10% of industry EBITDA, maybe 15% of industry EBITDA. If they're stronger in terms of subscribers and revenue, but in terms of free cash flow, on a combined basis, I'm not sure there's ever been a period of time where the sum of Sprint and T-Mobile have had positive free cash flow.
Wow. Is there enough money out there to finance 5G as many describe it? 5G gigabit networks? Or is there enough money to finance the nation telecommunications industry getting to 5G? Or are we going to have some government intervention in terms of some unusual type of assistance, like when we started trying to build wireless in rural America, we had to have a USF, we had to have some help. I mean, is there a role for government to play in how we get there?
the first part of your question is there enough industry capital? Bluntly, I think it goes back to your prior question. I think that in an environment in which you have three national players and then a healthy group of regional and niche strategy players, I think that is an environment in which you can afford it. In the absence of that, I think that it will be difficult to be able to have enough capital to continue to invest in that. Second part of the question, I'm not wild on the notion that government's the answer. That's kind of my reflexive answer to most questions. But the dynamic, I think, is also there. If you look at who most wants there to be 5G services, it's a lot of those major tech companies that I mentioned. It's media companies like Disney, the content side of a Comcast, I think are all interesting companies in terms of partnering and sources of capital. They want there to be a continuing investment in capacity. But we can't be in a situation in which we spend, as an industry, $70 billion on spectrum and $50 billion on network, and our reward is no increase in revenue. It's just not a sustainable model. On the other hand, I mean, Bolivia, per capita income's about $800. We have 4G in Bolivia today, and we found that we couldn't deliver the services, and we're finally seeing our 4G is less than a year old. We're finally seeing increases in revenue associated with that because we're able to provide higher capacity data services.
Oh, that's great. Okay, what's the score now? 1-1? Okay. Well,
1-1 top of the 11th, and Encarnacion is up.
Oh, all right.
And runners on first and second.
4 years ago, we sat down. You were kind enough to join us again. And I asked you the question then, when are the Mariners going to make it to the World Series? And you said, why don't you ask me that question again in several years? And so a lot has happened in several years, and now you're the CEO of the Mariners, and you've been on the job since August. I mean, come on.
August 19th,
so,
but who's counting?
When are we going to see them, in the playoffs?
We are the longest suffering team in baseball. We have been out of the playoffs since 2001. We and your favorite team, the Nats, are the two teams in Major League Baseball out of 30 that have never been to the World Series, although you spoke French up when you were the Expos for a period of time, so you can at least claim that history doesn't count. I think we've got a great team. Our general managers really put together pieces. We've got our 3, 4, and 5 hitters are among the strongest in baseball. He has really juggled with our bullpen, which has been a challenge, although now we've got 3 guys that supporting players that have over 50 saves each in prior stops. So we've got 2 guys that throw the ball 100 miles an hour, one of whom is throwing it right now 100 miles an hour, hopefully to Encarnacion. I think that we're in a position to do it. We've got to win about, hopefully today, and then 9 more games out of the last 12 in order to be able to 11, in order to be able to make it. So it's going to be hard, but I think I'll predict we'll make it. If we don't make it this year, we'll make it next year.
I got to tell you, they're very fortunate to have you at the helm now, and I know in another couple of years, hopefully you'll come back. You can show us the World Series ring. That'd be great.
Right now, I'm just looking for a wild card ring.
Yeah,
right? So.
A wild card ring. Well, I think we exhausted the time. I could go on and on because it's just fascinating talking to you. And I hope you have great luck on the Mariners, just like you've had in all your business endeavors. Please tell Terry we all send our best to her.
Thank you.
I know that she's doing double duty now since you got this ball club that you're trying
The funny
sure.
thing is, I suspect the Mariners as a business are smaller than most of the businesses managed by the people in this room, but it's a sacred franchise for us in this town, and it's something we got to protect and keep safe at home. So,
well, they got a good guy doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, my
and
friend.
I know that you moved mountains to get here and be part of this, and we really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Let's hear it for John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Tell Tom I said hello.